Welcome to the Great Books Mini Lecture for November. Thank you all for sharing your midday with us. My name is Michael Carragher. I'm an associate professor here in the English department, along with Professor Maureen Fitzpatrick. We've curated our sessions this semester, and it's been a great semester. Thank you all for supporting that. Want to always thank Video Services, want to thank marketing, also want to thank CoLab for the help in making this all happen. This is our last lecture for this semester. Please join us in February when we start up again and try to give you 3 more really good presentations to finish the semester. To begin, Tanya Hughes is Associate Professor of Film and Photography here at JCCC. She holds an MFA in Photography and Video and a graduate certificate in Women's Gender and Sexuality Studies. Before coming to JCCC, she taught photo, digital media, and women's studies at Georgia Southwestern State University in Georgia. She is in her 7th year here at the college, and she teaches all level of photography, filmmaking, and she's also taught digital imaging for artists and history of photography. So quite a few classes. In addition to her teaching, she is currently serving as co-chair of the Fine Arts Photo and Film Department. Tanya has also been quite active in a number of our diversity initiatives. She's been part of the DEI Task Force, Strategic Planning, and also the DEI Committee. She's worked on shared governance and also been the very first co-chair of the Academic Branch Council. So a very important presence on campus. Aside from her duties at the college, Tanya loves to hike, and she told me she has 5 dogs, 2 cats, and they are her world. So some of us understand that. For our presentation today, Professor Hughes has chosen Legacy Russell's Glitch Feminism. She says this is a book that a friend recommended to her, and she found it fascinating how the author is able to tie in computers, social media, and art to both social issues and the queer community. As always, we should probably have some time for some questions at the end, so if something comes up, please capture that and hold that. And we'll stay true to our usual hour mark as some of us have classes to get to. Friends, Professor Hughes.
I'm going to try not to talk too terribly fast, but it's kind of a lot to get through. So this is the book, Glitch Feminism. I don't read a lot of novels. I do a lot of research kind of reading. So anyway, I did find it really fascinating, kind of cool book. But I wanted to back up before I get even into the book, just to give some background. She is taking from kind of a foundation of something called queer theory. Queer theory was developed by philosopher Michael Foucault, and it's looking at queer kind of using the word in its original meaning, meaning odd. It does impact the queer community, but what queer theory is about is looking for places of an in-between binary. So when things are not this or that, but they're somewhere in between, which of course also includes the queer community, but it can mean all kinds of other things too. It can deal with race and socioeconomic standing and all kinds of stuff. Michael Foucault also wrote a very famous book entitled Discipline and Punishment. It was published in 1975. And in it, he discussed 3 what he identifies or calls abnormals. The first abnormal were citizens needing to be corrected and citizens that could be corrected. So to give you an example of who he's talking about, say you have somebody who is gay, but they can pretend or they can wear the face of being straight. They can stay closeted. So in Michael Foucault's definition, that would be a citizen that was corrected, that was folded into normal society. We could pretend they didn't really exist, right? The second abnormal were monsters, what he calls monsters. These abnormals are people that could not be folded into society for whatever reason. He specifically spent a lot of time talking about people who had serious mental illnesses, but also it could be lots of other things that other writers have kind of taken from. And then the last category I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, but he also labeled abnormals as people who masturbate. It had to do with Victorian Day and their kind of emphasis on sex being for procreation kind of only. So, but it sort of falls outside of the purpose of this presentation. And this is just sort of something I found interesting as we're talking about glitches, like glitches being something in the digital world that is a mistake, right? That's an error, those kind of things that drive us crazy when we're working in coding or different things. But I find it interesting that when we think about things in the natural world, right, we kind of celebrate those glitches. Like if you buy a real leather purse, right? And it's gonna have those kind of weird little things. It proves it's natural, or natural silk, and you'll see the little thing that it may have irregularities. Like we kind of enjoy those in the natural world, but not so much in the digital world. But what this author, what Legacy Russell is doing, is taking this idea of a glitch as a mistake, as this irregularity, and using it, the digital glitch, as a metaphor for people that are othered or marginalized, different types of communities like that. And so in that way, she's taking Michael Foucault's idea of queering, and she's queering this notion of a glitch. We tend to think of glitches as being problems. And so in this situation, Legacy Russell is taking the glitch and queering it to mean something that can be rather empowering and different in that way. So, glitches in humans. One of the things about queering the glitch is that we think of, getting back to Michael Foucault really briefly, glitch is a monster. It's something that cannot be corrected. We can't even really identify so often about what's causing the glitch. That's why they're problematic. And so queering digital code and processes, it sort of falls in an in-between place. So glitch feminism is using queer theory in order to glitch these metaphors for glitches in humans. So I want to talk a little bit about what Legacy Russell describes as her inspiration for this. So when they were like young teenager, and their bodies developing and all that stuff sort of happens to us, they were struggling with finding a place that they felt like they belonged. So what they started doing was creating avatars, right? So they found that it was really kind of empowering to create all kinds of different avatars to put on the skin of some other identity. So they could become different races, different ethnicities, different ages, different genders. And they really thought this was cool. This was some way to kind of break out of what any kind of pigeonholing of who they were, labeling of who they were. They found it really liberating. And so that became the inspiration for this. So they describe it this way. A glitch is an error, a mistake, a failure to function. Within technoculture, a glitch is part of manic anxiety, an indicator of something having gone wrong. But this built-in technological anxiety is something that spills over naturally when we encounter glitches in what they call the AFK, away from the keyboard. So, which is another way that glitch feminism is queering reality even. Like we tend to think of reality as being here, right? But then we have folks on Zoom and we exist in social media. And so they're suggesting that maybe we need to rethink what even reality is, especially like in their experience of now creating these different avatars and being able to experience different identities in that way. Which brings me to, I thought we should probably also back up. So this is a slide we use when we do safe zone training, just to kind of get through some terms and make sure we're all on the same page when we're talking about different things that ended up being part of glitch. So with sex, just some terms for clarity. Sex tends to be biological, like if you do a study of your chromosomes, right? Are you XXXY or XXY? Like what are you? At birth, sex assignment is, you have a baby and doctor goes, yay, it's a boy, or yay, it's a girl, tends to. But that doesn't, one of the things that's discussed in the book is how we become bodies and we become identities. And so that doesn't, often that doesn't define who we end up becoming later on. So we also have gender. Gender tends to be something we discuss as being on a spectrum, as does sex more and more. But gender is argued feminine or masculine as a general rule, or where on that spectrum you might fall. And gender identity is how we identify, how we choose to identify our own gender. Sexual orientation has to do with who we are sexually attracted to, but it is different than emotional attraction. Sometimes they're the same, sometimes not. Emotional attraction is that who we're romantically interested in. And then commitment style has to do with whether you're monogamous or poly or what. This breaks down really nicely. When we talk about gender, we're talking about the way we perceive our own gender on a spectrum. Orientation has to do with who you're attracted to, and then expression has to do with what gender you're performing for that day. Like I get up, I put on makeup, I curl my hair, I'm performing the feminine gender. And then biology, again, what you're born with based on chromosomes and biology. So the first chapter is Glitch Refuses. So, and it starts with a manifesto entitled Nope by an artist named Thus E. Jane. Okay, and so I wanted to read this because I found this really interesting. Nope. So Jane writes, I am not an identity artist just because I am a black artist with multiple selves. I am not grappling with the notions of identity and representation in my art. I'm grappling with the safety. We are beyond asking, should we be in the room? We are in the room. We are also dying at rapid pace and need a sustainable future. We need more people. We need better environments. We need places to hide. We need utopian demands. We need culture that loves us. I am not asking who I am. I'm a black woman and expansive in my blackness and my queerness, as blackness and queerness are always already expansive. None of this is as simple as identity and representation outside of the colonial gaze. I reject the colonial gaze as the primary gaze. I am outside of it in the land of nope. So I really love this, and this is talking about claiming of multiple selves and expanding of how we think of our own identity. This also references intersectionality. So with intersectionality, it's how you have multiple layers of identities. For me, I'm white, cis, queer, woman, professor, all those different things. But specifically, intersectionality is looking at oppression and how some identities end up having layers of oppression. So someone, for example, who is a black trans woman who's also queer and maybe comes from lower SES and perhaps is Muslim living in a Western world. That's layers of being marginalized, and it becomes a lot more difficult than someone who just has, say, one identity of that. But in this situation, again, kind of queering these notions of even of intersectionality and thinking of ways we can celebrate it. We can get rid of all different types of labels, and we can celebrate and be empowered within our glitch. There are layers of selves. Also, she references Audre Lorde, who wrote in her 1978 poem, A Litany for Survival, how we live at the shoreline. So this is kind of shameless plug a little bit for the NERMN. But right now, as we speak, they are installing photographer's work, Jess Dugan. And Jess Dugan is someone who's really thinking about this idea of nope and refusal of any specific identity. And actually the body of work is entitled To Survive on These Shores, winking back at Audre Lorde. And this is a self-portrait of Jess Dugan. And then part of To Survive on These Shores, Jess did a lot of research and photographs of people from the trans community who were over the age of 50. And that was a specific kind of population that she was interested in, because I think that Jess would argue, and I would agree, that people over the age of 50 who are trans, they had a very different experience of their glitch than the trans community now in their 20s. So really looking and investigating of that. But also Jess and their current work is really interested in photographing people who defy all representation of a binary gender, right? So here you have someone who is a man, but who is pregnant. Just breaking it all down, just exploding all of our kind of preconceived notions about what gender should look like. So they talk in the book, they talk a lot about the power of refusal. If glitches' bodies cannot be coded, they can't be programmed, right? You can't kind of control us. If we cannot be labeled, if we cannot label the glitch, we can't correct the glitch, and we can't punish the glitch. Other bodies are invisible because they can't be read by any normative mainstream, and therefore they can't be categorized. They are erased or misclassified within the outside of an algorithm designation. They also quote Essex Hemphill, can invisible men see their own reflection? Glitch through the internet proposes that we can find ways to hold mirrors up for one another. We can seize the digital imagery as an opportunity to build on what is the glitch. Glitch is also a mode of non-performance. It's a failure to perform, right? It's a failure to perform what we traditionally think of as normalized gender. It's a refusal to perform. Glitch is a paradox that becomes a catalyst. It moves as it also blocks. So even thinking about us sitting at our computers when there's a glitch, we have to figure out what to do with the glitch now. How are we going to deal with this? And so that's what they're proposing. I would argue that our looking at pronouns, thinking about the use of pronouns, and it's being normative now to the point that we have changed our language in order to accommodate for they pronouns as a singular. Things like that, that's what they're talking about. The glitch becomes this empowered kind of thing that can change society. So Donna Haraway, part of what inspired this also, or that they wink to in this book, is Donna Haraway's Cyborg Manifesto. So the Cyborg Manifesto is looking at people, also references queer theory, looking at people and thinking about modernity, right? Like how modern life has changed us. And Donna Haraway argues that none of us are natural anymore. When I brush my teeth, I'm not natural. When I curl my hair and put on makeup, I'm not natural. So we really are all cyborgs. And then in a similar kind of way, thinking about how as cyborgs, we're kind of glitches, right? We're not one thing or the other, and kind of queering those ideas of what is a cyborg. Critique of it, Donna Haraway wrote this in 1985. In glitch feminism, they're still arguing that even as far as current as 1985, there was still a lot of racism, and this does very much kind of come from white feminism perspective. So I did want to kind of note that as well. But there is this connection to the glitch in that body of work. Another chapter is glitch as cosmic. Glitch is cosmic. I kind of interpreted this a little bit for myself. It helped me kind of understand where she was coming from, as glitch is an abstraction. So in the arts, we talk about, in a very broad way, art being created that's representational or abstract or non-representational. And especially non-representational and abstract get confused a lot. So I thought I would start with this. You can see here, representational, right? We look at that, we know exactly that this is supposed to be a woman. We can identify this. It's very much referencing something natural, representing something natural. The middle piece is Nude Descending a Staircase. It too is representing a woman and is referencing something natural. Do you see it? The nude walking down the staircase? A lot of my students are like, what? Okay, so I'll just kind of show you, like up at the top, that's her head as she's moving down the stairs, shoulder, body, hips, thigh, knee, calf. You can even see the pearls kind of swinging, right? So an abstraction is still referencing the natural world, but it's skewing it. It's taking it and making it more about feeling and impression and less about something exact. And then we have Rothko, which is non-representational. When you get here in art, it's only about materials, Has nothing to do with anything natural. It's not intended to represent anything natural. It's about material, color material, and that's it. So let me kind of go back actually. For me, this helped me think through what they were talking about as it being, I don't know, this kind of like intangible thing, the glitch, right? So for me, when you think of cis, normative, binary, white, privilege, it all has to do with that representational. That's the norm. That's the way we go through kind of expecting people to be. Non-binary, glitch, queered, all of those things sort of fall in this in-between again, right? We're referencing things, but blurring perception of the binary, kind of deconstructing our ideas of binary, focusing on intersectionality of oppressed bodies, which we're even going to kind of undo this idea of bodies soon. That for me becomes this like point of abstraction where we're talking about the glitch. But then glitch is actual code, right? Is actual mistaken code, completely blurring of everything is like non-representational. Does that make sense a little bit? It helped me to understand it. I don't know if it will. All right, so on page 42, she says, we all begin in abstraction. We are ungendered, but biologically sexed bodies that as we develop, we take on gendered form either via performance or constructs of social projections. To dematerialize, to once more abstract the body and transcend its limitation, we make room for other realities. And this becomes an important theme. The idea is we start making room for all these realities and we get rid of binaries. The glitch can enable movement between all three by allowing us to have online identities in addition to our AFK, remember, away from keyboard identities, that can kind of blur everything. The next chapter is entitled Glitch Throws Shade, meaning, throwing shade. Throwing shade specifically on society. So the first thing that Legacy Russell discusses is that we throw shade, those of us who are in marginalized communities, we throw shade on society by our very existence. We are a glitch. We're not supposed to exist, right? I wanted to point out kind of some of the interesting examples that they use to look at glitch and how it throws shade. So this is a performance artist. Her name is Victoria Sin. She does identify as a cis woman, but her performance work is she dresses in drag as a man who is dressing in drag as a woman, using prosthetics and all of the over-the-top kind of makeup and wigs and everything, just as typical male drag shows are used, only you have this woman who's dressing like a man who's dressing like a woman. So very interesting kind of glitch and interesting way to throw shade on all of it, right? On all the genders. Glitch, ghost. And this becomes and by ghosting, Legacy Russell means ghosting like we talk about in slang, ghosting. Ignoring, getting rid of it, undermining it, just making it disappear, ghosting. And Legacy Russell is really encouraging everyone in society to ghost the idea of anything binary. And they are proposing that it's a threefold process to ghost that we should all embrace. The first is that body, gender, and concepts, even down to, for many, many years in feminism, women, gender, sexuality studies, we've talked about gender as a social construct, right? So Legacy Russell is saying we even need to get rid of that. We need to understand that even that is damaging. There should be no reference to binary anymore. Just get rid of it. And we need to understand that all of these notions, even the notion of a body as being some kind of identifier, can be damaging. The second in this process is that we have the right to refuse, which I thought this was really kind of powerful. Like we are all raised with these notions of binary, and so very simply, they're saying we can just say no. We can just say no. We're gonna, everybody's a they, and we're no more man-woman bathrooms. I'm just gonna go when I need to pee wherever it's open, right? Like, just say no, and that we have the right to refuse this. And then the third in to ghost these notions is that we should not assimilate. We should refuse these things now. We should step back and just say no more. Then glitch is error. Errors cannot be easily replicated, right? As an artist, I've had times where I would do something accidental in the darkroom and go, ooh, that's kind of cool. And then I'd spend like months trying to make it happen again, right? So glitches cannot be so easily replicated. And so this too becomes part of how it can become empowering to embrace that instead of trying to fix it, to just let it be. Then glitch encrypts. By encrypting, what they're talking about is that, going back, thinking about Jess Dugan's work, right? If you can't read a body, you can't look at a body and go, this is female, this is male, or whatever, by not having readability, then it's decoding it. It's decoding it completely. So it's a decoding of race, gender, sexual orientation, all of it, if we can just kind of start getting rid of these things. And that they're proposing that that's part of what glitch does successfully, is it makes it to where we have to decode, we can't read it anymore. Glitch is skin. So we know that biological skin, it functions as an edit, right? It helps keep what should be in, and it helps keep what should be out. It also helps us feel. And one of the specific examples that's used in the book is how when one skin touches the skin of another, we have an understanding of where our skin ends, our body's end, and the next begins. Digital skin is a little different, and it can reflect society, is one of the things that Legacy Russell is discussing. Two examples about digital skin and how it can kind of reflect society. There's an artist named Amelia Ullman. That's a picture of her there. So she did a 5-month performance where she used Instagram and created a fake persona of this social elite woman who's upper class, very wealthy. And she just screenshotted or took pictures of the Instagram and comments, and how quickly people assumed that this digital performance was real. Interestingly then, Anna Delvey, not sure if you've heard of this case, but a real con artist, saw this, and that's where she got her inspiration. She did the same thing, created this persona of who she was, used Instagram, but managed to con hotel chains out of millions and millions of dollars. There's a great Netflix series about her that's on. But what you end up with here is life imitating art, imitating life. So it functions very much as this permeable kind of skin in this way that can kind of change and be accepted as such. Glitch is virus. When we think of computer viruses, of course, we're thinking of something that infiltrates our computer and gives us a lot of headache. Glitch feminism as a virus does the same thing, but in kind of a positive way. It's a way of changing society. One of the things that is pointed to in the book, a computer virus corrupts data. It costs capitalism. This is where Legacy Russell also spends a lot of time talking about capitalism and how it challenges the endemic correlation between value, labor, and the dangerousness in uselessness, which is kind of interesting to me, this idea that we're dangerous if we're not always working and producing. In terms of glitch feminism as a virus, it too kind of puts a wrench in the gears of gender, right? It's like undermining it all. There's a desire to break it all down in order to start something completely new. And I wanted to point out one of the examples in art that the book uses is American Artist. So in this way, this artist completely subverts even the canon in art. So what he did is he changed his name to American Artist. So anytime you do a Google search for American Artist, you're going to get him. So it's kind of brilliant. He wasn't very well known or anything until he did this. And now anytime you Google American Artist, he pops up. So kind of clever. So it's a glitch, right? It's a glitch in the coding that this would happen, that you're not just going to get true American artist, but you'll get, well, he too is an American artist, but you'll get him because of the name. So it becomes a glitch in like our coding. Again, glitch mobilizes. I think pronoun use is one of the most obvious one. Facebook has all kinds now of identities you can put in for different, whatever your gender is. And then again, your changing of your pronouns and all that. So society is already starting to embrace this little by little. And it's because the glitch mobilizes. If you have a glitch on your computer, you have to do something different or you're never going to get around. And then glitch is remix and glitch survives. So I wanted to end with these last two quotes from the book. This one is not born, but rather becomes a body. And one is not born, but rather becomes a glitch. And then the last quote, Legacy Russell says, let the whole goddamn thing short circuit. I will say, when I said I would do this book, I had just started reading it. So to be honest, it's probably not a great book. It's kind of more of a pretty good book. Because, I'll be honest, because it gets a little repetitive, and in art, I would tell my students, you're overselling your point. But so you can kind of sum it up, and the last chapter just goes back through all the other chapters and gives you a summary, and you kind of got it. Any questions?
I may have missed this. What year did that come out?
Oh,
I'm sorry. What year was the publication?
let me look it up. I don't even know. 2020. Yeah. Relatively new. I think you can tell by content too.
I was just curious if they address why the title has feminism in the name, if the whole jig is to deconstruct gender. I just was curious.
Isn't that curious? No, they don't say anything about it. But you're right, it is curious. The only thing I can think of, and again, they don't say this, I'm just guessing, is probably because it ends up being a part of feminist discourse in grad school, and you know, we talk about all this stuff. So like women, gender, and sexuality studies, I don't know why they didn't, I don't know. Good question though, right? We should also maybe rethink some of these names.
I was just going to say that at this point, feminism as a concept is getting more and more removed from feminism and femaleness as a gender. So I think that's why it's still in there when they're saying we should get rid of all of it.
That makes sense. One thing I did love about this book is that throughout the entire book, they're using artists as references to wink at. So it's really good that way if you're interested in contemporary art and what's being done out there in that world. Tons of information about artists.
Tanya, you started by talking about Foucault, and if somebody is steeped in theory, Foucault makes sense. Is the book accessible for somebody who doesn't have that theoretical background?
Yes. I don't know that you would get as much out of it, but one of the things that I think would be really appealing about the book for students is they spend a lot of time talking about social media and avatars and things that I think our students get, probably even, I may get Foucault more, but they're going to get that more, if truth be told. You know, I'd never heard AFK. I kept having to go, what? Oh, wait, AFK. Because after they define it once, then they just say AFK and I'd have to go back and think. I'm guessing, I don't know, but I'm guessing some of our students already understand those kind of things. It is very much an academic book, though. Like even with the artists, they're not they'd be artists that our students would probably want to go and look up. Terms on occasion they'd probably want to go look up, but interesting.
I did really enjoy the reference of the art. That did paint a really good picture. I also enjoyed the correlation to nature and how we accept how nature comes in all different forms and shapes and sizes, and we call that beautiful, and call other people who are out of their norm or who are out of their shapes and sizes, and we see that they're weird. And I think the reason that she's correlating the art to it is just like nature is art itself, and then there's physical art, and then there's human art of like where you sit in classes and paint women who are naked or men or, you know, things like that, or different types of beauty per se. I thought it all really went well together.
Good. By the way, that whole bit about nature was just me sort of pondering. It's not in the book, but I think you just articulated it really well, though. I think when we look at nature, we do embrace and even appreciate things that we might call a glitch in people or in digital code, which I just think is interesting.
You talked about the book referencing artists. Does it have images in the book as well? And were they the ones you showed or different?
I picked Jess Dugan because I knew that it was a perfect example, and I knew that Nerman was about to put work in there, so you'd be able to see it. Unfortunately, there's not tons of photos or images from these artists, so some of them I had not even heard of, and I would find myself just going and looking them up. So no, but they give you enough information. It's an easy Google search, and you'll find them.
I appreciated the reference you made to avatars very early. I guess I'm wondering about the timing. Do you think if avatars had been available like 20 years ago, people would have shunned representing themselves out of their defined roles? Or do you, I guess just the role of avatars is a form of expression. Do you think that's socially based, or do you think that the opportunity has opened up an openness?
There's another artist, and y'all forgive me, I cannot remember her name to save my life. She's an Asian artist, and I can see her work because that's how I work. Very early, I don't know if y'all remember a software kind of game called Second Life. Okay, I guess now it's no more. But she was an artist who was doing a lot of research using Second Life. She was the first person to figure out how, she made a documentary of her avatar and her avatar's experience. And, you know, in that world, you could have children, you could get married, you could do all kinds of stuff. And her research and her art were both based in that. According to her research, people are more themselves as an avatar, generally speaking, than they are in real life. And interestingly, within Second Life, she noted that our social norms still existed. So if we typically have about 3 feet of what we call personal space, that if an avatar stepped into somebody else's 3 feet in that world, the other avatar would respond like our social norms kind of maintain. But as much as that was what her research was showing, interestingly, the guy that she was married to, or her romantic involvement in Avatar world, he was presenting as like this super buff Asian person. But in real life, when she finally met him, he was a cowboy kind of person from Texas, not anything like that. So I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know. I kind of feel like it, and I always hesitate to apply anything to generations, because I think generations have more similarity between them than they do differences. But I wonder if maybe it is somewhat generational, because like my son's age, he grew up with all this technology. And so for me, I might use it. I would kind of hesitate to put myself out there as something that I'm totally not. But clearly, this became an experiment for someone in their tween age, right? So some of it may be just how accustomed we are to these technologies, but that's a guess. It's way outside of my research. I bet you somebody has researched that.
Next battle before you.
You're right.
Any other questions? Tanya, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.